Hi, this is Julie Heisey, author of Virtual Sabotage, and you're listening to the Cook Memorial Public Library Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Cook Memorial Public Library Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Goss. Today, Reader's Advisor Joe Hansen joins me on the podcast to talk about some of our most anticipated books coming out over the next few months and ways you can get the latest updates on what's new and popular at the library. Now, one of the best perks of being a librarian is we often get a sneak peek at the books coming right around the corner. Publishers send us advanced readers' copies, including some of the most anticipated titles from some of the hottest authors. We get these early copies so we can do a better job of recommending new books to you, our readers. And with plenty of days left to squeeze in a few additional summer reads, and with the fall titles surely coming out before you know it, Joe and I have a handful of books to let you know about. So, Joe, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Nate.
So I thought what we could do is just kind of ping-pong back and forth with some of the books that we're most excited to get into our readers' hands here at the library. Would you maybe want to kick us off with a title or two?
Sure. One of the books I'm looking forward to reading is called Inland by Tia Obrecht. Tia wrote a book about 5 years ago called The Night Tiger. And it was just a beautiful literary, mystical book. And then she didn't write anything for a long time. So this is her new book, and it's different. It's a Western, and it imagines people struggling, trying to settle the West. And it does have some of her magical realism in it.
And so we're talking about the settings, the Wild West for this one?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, yeah.
And it's a magical realism. Sounds like it might be a bit of a theme in our podcast. I think one of the titles I'm going to talk about has a little bit of that as well. Seems to be kind of a hot thing right now.
It is,
books.
Yeah.
Inland by Tia Obrecht. So this is one that a lot of people are looking forward to because the last book was so beloved.
Right. It made like all these best lists, and it was her debut novel, The Night Tiger. And then we didn't hear from her for a long time. So this is exciting that she has a new book out, and it's getting rave reviews. Every reviewer is giving it starred reviews. So
she was taking all that time to craft her masterpiece.
Yes, she's not like a James Patterson kind of author who comes up with a book every month or so. She takes her time. Yeah.
All right. So speaking of magical realism, the book that I want to talk about is one that I'm sure a lot of people are going to be talking about as it comes closer. Mm-hmm. This book comes out September 24th, so we're still looking a little bit of a ways away here. But I got my hands on a copy of the debut fiction novel from Ta-Nehisi Coates, who I'm not sure really even needs an introduction, but just in case you need one. He is a National Book Award winner for 2015's Between the World and Me.
Great book.
A great book that seemed like around that time everybody was reading. A lot of people know him as a writer for The Atlantic, which a lot of his writings were compiled into his last book, We Were 8 Years in Power. And he was also just recently part of the congressional hearings on reparations that happened in Congress, what was that, maybe a month or two ago or so? And so here he comes with this new novel that's a historical fiction. It follows the character Hiram Walker, someone who was born a slave. So this takes place during slavery in America. And a lot of what he talks about in the book is something that is almost too horrific. We don't like to think about it too much, which is the separation of families during within slavery. Hiram's mother, he never really got to know because she was sold away when he was very young. But where the magical realism comes in this book is that early on in the book, he realizes he has this mysterious power. Once he realizes he has this power, it kind of takes him on this journey. And what Coates does in this book is use Hiram as this lens to give you this really interesting story that ends up weaving in things like the Underground Railroad, Harriet Tubman. You really get a chance to see the systems that were in place around the time of the antebellum South, the abolition movement going on in the North. So it really takes you all across the country during this time. And, it's Coates, so the writing is beautiful. And I didn't know how that was going to translate over into fiction, but,
right. It's his first novel.
It's his first novel, so you don't know how that's going to translate. But I can assure you that it works beautifully in this case. So that's The Water Dancer. Again, comes out in September, late September. So do you have another pick for us, Joe?
William Kent Kruger has a standalone coming out. He was very popular with our patrons for a standalone called Ordinary Grace. He also writes a mystery series that takes place in Minnesota. But he has a new book coming out called This Tender Land. And the Goodreads says it's for fans of Before We Were Yours and Where the Crawdads Sing. So it's about 4 orphans on a life-changing odyssey during the Great Depression. And that just sounds so cool, and I really want to get my hands on it. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. I know Ellen Jennings, another reader's advisor, did read it, and she highly recommends it.
Oh, great.
So if you liked Ordinary Grace, you want to put This Tender Land on hold.
Well, you also compared it to Where the Crawdads Sing, which I swear is one of our... It seems like the hold list on that is insane, and it's very hard to get your hands on a copy
so
of
hard.
that. So this could be a great one to read while you're waiting for that. All right, so I'll go next then. I've got my second book that I'm going to recommend is another one that I read that comes out just next month. August 13th is the date it comes out. Now, this is a nonfiction pick. It might be the only nonfiction pick we talk about in this episode. And this one is by Ibram X. Kendi, who is a historian. He also won the National Book Award for his 2016 historical book, Stamped from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America. So it seems like I'm kind of been reading a lot about racism this summer.
Yeah, me too.
But hey, it is definitely a hot topic, to be sure.
Timely topic.
Very timely topic. And seems like the right time for this book to come out. It seems like the book that our country really kind of needs right now. The book that Ibram X. Kendi is following up Stamped from the Beginning with is a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And for some of you, the term anti-racist might be new, but that's okay because he defines it in the book. It's the first thing he does. Now, Ibram X. Kendi is actually the founding director of the Anti-Racist Research and Policy Center at American University. And what I think Kendi is really great at is just defining our terms. So what do we mean when we say something is racist or that's a racist idea? And then what do we do about that? And this is a book that it really explores a lot about ideas. It could be very heady and hard to kind of wrap your head around, but what Kendi does beautifully, I think, is he puts the entire book through a memoir format so that you really are going through his life and his experiences with racism, but also just his own journey through realizing where he had racist ideas and how he has come to where he's at and how he views race, the idea of being an anti-racist, and why some of our ideas about what is and what isn't racist and what are the causes and solutions to racism have been a little bit misguided. And so because he's doing it through memoir, I think any time where someone could read it and think, oh, this is getting really preachy or self-righteous or it's just making me feel terrible, I think that because he's doing it all through his own lens, he's creating this bed of empathy that the whole thing can kind of flourish in. I highly recommend this book. I think no one will read this book and not be challenged in some way or another. I don't care how progressive you think you are on ideas of race and, social justice issues and things of the sort. You will be challenged by this book in a good way. And that's the thing is I think with both of my picks, I think a lot of listeners could be like, well, I don't really want to, I want a book that's going to make me happy or that's going to take me away. I don't want to have to sit in all this misery. And I think in both cases, I can say, both with Water Dancer and with How to Be an Anti-Racist, there's enough of a thread of either hope. Kendi is almost surprisingly optimistic about what we can do as a country if we choose so.
Yeah.
Or in the case of Coates, where it's historical and you're reading this very hard history, there's just enough beautiful humanity in there. Enough for you, I think, to grasp on and feel like this was definitely worth the read. It wasn't just kind of being dragged through the mud the entire time. So I want to make sure that's clear because neither of these sound necessarily like good beach reads, I guess.
No, probably not.
So do you have another title of one that's coming out soon?
Yes. There's some big titles coming out this fall that you want to get on the hold list for now. So one of them is Margaret Atwood's follow-up to The Handmaid's Tale is coming out.
Oh, wow.
Called The Testaments.
So this is almost like a sequel to The
It
Handmaid's
is a sequel to The Handmaid's Tale.
Would that be in our catalog already?
Yes, it is.
So definitely you can go in there right now and get your name on the hold list.
And another follow-up to a huge book that won the Pulitzer Prize is the sequel to Olive Kitteridge by Elizabeth Strout. And the new book is called Olive Again. So we get to revisit Olive Kitteridge. And I know some people are like, oh, they couldn't stand Olive. But then when they started reading more about her, they started to like her. And they even did I think it was HBO, did a series
with
about
Frances McDormand.
Frances McDormand was great.
Which I loved. I loved that series.
Yeah. But if you liked Olive, you get to visit her again in the new book, Olive Again. And you can put that on hold.
Okay.
If you like Alice Hoffman, she has a new book called The World That We Knew, which I think is just a standalone. And there's some big authors who write series that are extremely popular, like Michael Connelly. He does the Harry Bosch series, and he's now combining Harry with Renee Ballard, a female detective. And that book is called Nightfire, and that's coming out in October.
So that's for all the people who want something more suspense thriller,
yes, and
series-oriented.
There's more than 20 books in the Harry Bosch series. But if you haven't read Harry, you could start with the last 2 books that he is with Renee Ballard.
Okay.
And then one other one, if you want a kind of a feel-good book, Jojo Moyes, who always tells a good story, she has a book called The Giver of Stars, and it's about librarians. And I think it's about the librarians who went out on horseback and would, kind of like your first bookmobile.
Okay, but on horseback.
Horseback, and go out into the poor country areas and delivering books. So that's
cool.
coming out. So if you like Jojo Moyes, and I know a lot of you out there do.
Of course, yeah.
Put the Giver of Stars on hold.
So you just threw out a ton of titles. I feel like there was something in there for pretty much everybody.
Right.
And everything that we've talked about should already be in the catalog
yes.
for people to go ahead and place holds on. But we don't always have a podcast episode to talk about these things. So for people who want to continue to keep up on books that are going to be coming out, what should I know about? What are some ways that we have now for people to be able to keep up on the books that they want to read?
Oh, there's lots of ways.
Okay.
One of the best ways is to sign up for our email newsletters. The bestseller preview, which I put together every month, breaks down by month the New York Times best-selling authors, and who's coming out. And a lot of the books I just mentioned, like I'm sure Margaret Atwood is going to be on the New York Times bestseller alert. So I put that in the list, so you'll find out when all these big authors have books coming out.
So this isn't necessarily what are the bestsellers right now. These are anticipated
Correct.
bestsellers. So things that people are anticipating are going to be on the bestseller list.
So it's August. The next one that's coming out will be August through October.
Okay.
So, and then every month I add a new month and take out the old month. But if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get an email listing them all, and you can look, and there'll be links in there, and you can click on it and put the book on hold.
Oh, great. This is tied in with our library,
right.
So you get that link to be able to put stuff on hold.
Right. And there's a lot of other email newsletters that we have, including, I want to give a shout out to the new large type coming out, because I put that together. And we don't have that many people listed on that yet. But if you want to know when some big books are coming out in large type, sign up for that one. And some other new ones we have are horror. If you're a horror reader, we have inspirational fiction, which is inspirational and religious fiction, Christian fiction. You might want to sign up for that. And then a new category, too, is thrillers and suspense. So we already have a mystery newsletter, and we now broke it down to have thrillers and suspense, which is a little different animal than a mystery. So you might want to be on both of those lists. And the other one that I'm really excited about is we have a Library Reads newsletter now. Now, Library Reads comes out once a month, and it's library employees all over the country can vote ahead of time of what their favorite book was for the month. Like, for example, the August one just came out. And the Tia Obrecht book that I mentioned before, Inland, is on there. And there's a lot of other really cool books. And so if you sign up, you'll see, okay, here a month ahead of time, these are all books that library people are recommending. Mm-hmm. Sign up for the Library Reads. That's a great way to learn about it. So if you want to sign up for the email newsletter blast, it's really easy. You go to our website, cooklib.org, and then you go to the Books, Movies, and Music page. And if you scroll down a little bit on the right-hand side, there's a Don't Miss Out. Subscribe here. And you click on the Don't Miss Out, and it'll take you to the page of all the different email newsletters you can subscribe to. You can subscribe to all of them or just 2 of them. You pick what your interests are, and we will send it to you once a month. And if you want to know what we are reading as a library staff, I would highly recommend you follow us on Goodreads. If you don't have a Goodreads account, it's real easy. You just sign up with an email and a password.
At goodreads.com, all one word.
Yes. Yeah. And then you can find the library Goodreads account just from our website. You click on the big G for Goodreads, and it'll take you there. And I manage the Goodreads account for the library, and we have, I think, 2,300 books on there now that I have reviewed, put stars on that we have read, and under different categories. So you can look up on the shelves, like for romance. You want to know what romances we liked, or what mysteries, or nonfiction. We have just about everything in there. And I use our Goodreads account a lot, actually, to help people find books. And if you're really stuck, if you just need specific recommendations, you can always go to our bookies page and request that one of the bookies recommend some books for you.
That's cooklib.org/bookies. Now, the idea behind this is really that you get to fill out a form and say exactly what you're looking for, and you get a personalized reading list from one of us. And, of course, occasionally, as you know, if you've subscribed to this podcast frequently enough, we do book talks here as well. So this can be a great resource also for getting a few suggestions, as I hope people did during this episode talking with you, Jo.
I hope so, too.
Yeah. So thank you for, taking the time to come on here and highlight a few books and also talk about all the different ways that people can get up to date on what's going on. Thank you for being on the podcast again.
Thanks, Nate. It's been fun.
Okay, so there you have it. That's going to just about wrap things up for us here at the podcast today. Before you go, I just wanted to mention a few things here. Our blog, Shelf Life, where we post a lot of these book reviews, but we also put a lot of other things on there too, such as some local history stories, genealogy tips, new things going on at the library, including our digital studios. So be sure to stop on by over at that blog. The address is shelflife.cooklib.org. And, of course, we want to mention our website, which has been mentioned a few times in this episode, but I'll mention it again, cooklib.org. That's where you can find our catalog, especially if there's specific books or movies or whatever you're looking for that you want to search. You can always search our catalog there and hopefully find exactly what you're looking for. As always, I want to mention that you can get in touch with us anytime you'd like. You can talk to us on Twitter at Cook Library, or you can send us an email. Send those messages to webmaster@cooklib.org. And if you like this episode, please spread the word by sharing it with others and let them know that they can catch all future episodes of the Cook Memorial Public Library podcast in Apple Podcasts or any other podcasting app that they like to get their podcasts from. And if you really want to show your support, you can help us out a lot by leaving a brief rating on Apple Podcasts. Those ratings go a long way in getting this out to new listeners. We hope you're enjoying your summer, and we will be back soon, but until then, keep reading, keep watching, and keep listening.